Thanks for joining me on episode 569 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hello, my friend. This is Dr. Brad Miller from the Pathway to Promise podcast. If you'd like to stay inspired, to stay on your pathway to promise, you can't do better than listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
And that kind of change, that kind of coaching is different from consulting, it's different from teaching, it's different from therapy. See, in therapy, we ask the client about the problem and we begin to focus on supporting them around a solution to a problem. But in coaching, it's much more focused on the solution than the problem. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about developing your influence through stewarding your talent, I talk with you about how a coach can support you during times of change, how this kind of coaching is different than coaching for development, and why it's so important to recognize when you need coaching for change. You've heard me talk about developing your talent, and one of the best ways to do that is through books. But if you're like most people today, it's hard to find the time to read. And that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can pick one and listen your way to developing your talents via Audible. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast. Change is one of those things that we all have to deal with. And right now, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, I wanted to talk a little bit about change. Change kind of comes as two different sources. You can change because you choose to change. And then sometimes change comes upon us from outside and we're forced to change. But in general, change is not something that most of us are terribly comfortable with. We don't love the thought of changing. We don't want to change in many cases. Unless something is really bad and there's a lot of pain, we have a tendency to remain where we're at, to exist in sort of a state of status quo. We don't really identify typically a need to change. And one of the things that happens a lot of times is maybe as somebody is working with you or somebody is talking to you, they talk to you about the need for you to change, but they don't actually see the need for themselves to change. I think oftentimes it's easier for us to, quote, see the need that somebody else has to change than to see the need for ourselves to change. And as a coach, change is one of those things that at its core, I'm always working with my clients on. Because the truth is, generally, when clients come to me as a coach, whether it's for finances, whether it's for time management and work on that, whether it's about their career and how they're dealing with their job, whether it's because they have a dream job that they want to launch and start and they just can't figure out how to get from where they are to where they want to go. The truth is they're coming to a coach to support them through that change, to help them change. And so one of the things that I talk to people about is there's kind of two different kinds of coaching in a way. There's coaching for development, which is a skills-based coaching. This is where I look at a missing skill that you have or a weak skill that you have, and I identify somebody that has that skill and can mentor you or teach you or help you develop that skill yourself. That's coaching for development. On the other hand, there's coaching for change. And this is often what I do. Coaching for change is about looking and helping people figure out what is it that they want? How do they want to get from point A to point B? And what is point B in the first place? They generally know that where they are today isn't where they want to be. And they either need help creating the dream or creating the path to a dream that they have. And that kind of change, that kind of coaching is different from consulting. It's different from teaching. It's different from therapy. See, in therapy, we ask the client about the problem and we begin to focus on supporting them around a solution to a problem. But in coaching, it's much more focused on the solution than the problem. In both of those, though, we do have to talk to the client. We have to ask. The client has to co-create the coaching relationship themselves. It's not just directed. Teaching and consulting are much more of the tell model. I tell someone to do something. And honestly, that's one of the things that happens a lot in change. If someone has told you to change, if you've ever been through change at work, where somebody comes in, a new manager comes in, and they want to exhibit and put in a new way of doing things. They want everyone to change to the new way of doing things. And all they do is come in and tell everyone, you must change. You know what that looks like. People begin to grouse about it. They begin to fight about it. They begin to argue about it. They push back against it. They don't like to go through that kind of change. Telling people to change or telling yourself to change is not an effective way of exhibiting and going through and following through on that need for change. See, the first thing that has to happen for you to change is you have to recognize your current reality. You have to recognize where you are today. You have to get clear on what that looks like, what that feels like, and the emotions behind it. And then from there, we have to create a vision of where we're going. We have to recreate reality in our imagination and begin to paint a picture of what success looks like. Where are you going? What are the goals that you have? What is it about your finances that you want to fix? What is it about your time that you want to fix? What is it about this new business that you want to create? How will it feel to have those things happen? And then you begin to inject alternatives and tools and techniques and routines and structure. This is where there is a little bit of teaching involved sometimes. There is a little bit more of a consulting step. Sometimes it is about helping inject a tool and teaching a client or someone how to use it. But other times it's about helping the client find the best tool for them. And in fact, even when it's about showing a tool, you still have to work with the client to co-create the way that that particular client uses this tool or this technique themselves, because it has to integrate in their life. This is where it's an art form to coach as opposed to a linear process. And then last, you have to both help the client take actions and hold them accountable to those actions so that you can support them throughout the process as a coach of moving from point A to point B. You can support them the entire path. You can help them see and develop and envision and execute on the change. You know, if you're in a situation right now where with everything that's going on, it's highlighted for you that there's maybe some areas of your life where you're not really living out and doing everything the way God wants you to do it, where you're not seeing the fruits that you know you should be seeing in the work that you're doing, when you're not able to live out and do everything that you want to do and that you are not using all of your resources to the best of your ability. If that feeling is happening right now, this is a really good time to start thinking about coaching. Even if you're in a situation right now where you're sort of in crisis and can't afford it today, it's okay. Think about coaching. And remember, again, like coaches like me, I'll offer 30 minutes of time to you just to sit down and help you brainstorm a little bit about getting started on the path today. I do that all the time. This time is no different. So if you're finding yourself struggling, don't hesitate to reach out to me, reach out to another coach, and see if they can help you develop and create and navigate a path towards change. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of talent, you can go over to inspiredstewardship.com/talent and sign up for our 5-week series on the stewardship of talent. Or if you're in the U.S., you can text 44222 talent tips. That's talent tips to 44222 and get those tips. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.